That's Amy right there saying you're screwing it up. Hey everybody, go see if we're on.
Okay, wait.
Fix it, right?
Yes.
Hi everybody, little technical setup here.
That looks good to me. Oh, did not.
All right, we're gonna make sure everything looks good from our end. Was that Amy?
Oh wait, no, it's going live now. Let me join it. Click to expand. Yeah.
Good. Am I lefty or righty?
Well, it's lagging. Well, it lags.
Whatever. I don't know what that means. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to Kazacado up here in lovely Greenwood Heights section of Brooklyn. We are getting ready for our second session in our Cucina Tipica reading series. Little roll call here for the Cotto family. We got Mama Cotto, Pam Beal Cotto upstairs with the dogs. And we have, no one's here yet?
There's like 5.
Oh, that's a pretty good idea. You know what, I'm gonna give it a few minutes. For
Yeah, maybe you should do that.
Let's call that practice. Rehearsal, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, fine. I'll have some of my Negroni. I hope you are joining me in an aperitivo. These are good. This is the only cocktail I like besides like martinis. Just saying. How long do we wait?
That's up to you. There's 12 people on it.
12 people. Hi, everybody. I think a smart thing to do is just to give it a few minutes. So if you're here early, I really should have anticipated this. Whatever. You know, if you're here early, keep drinking. You can comment if it looks blurry, I look stupid, if you don't like my shirt. I have time to do all these changes if you want to help us out with some feedback.
Do you want me to read out some comments?
If they're good.
Amy says hello, looks good.
Okay, good.
Amy Darshvernov
Sure, what the heck's
says hey Andy.
Hey, what's up? Hey, how are you?
Michelle Di Pietro.
Yeah?
Excuse me if I'm butchering these names.
You are.
Okay. Hi Andrew.
Hi, Michelle.
Dorothy.
I got some food here, Michelle.
Dorothy DiMarzo says
Yes.
hi.
Hi, Dorothy.
Lisa Diffuso
That's
says
your cousin.
hey. Oh my god.
That'd be cousin Lisa. I think you met.
Says hey cuz.
Hey, cuz.
I could have read that.
Yeah.
Matthew Reed says hey Andy.
Matt
Sorry
Reed.
I missed last week.
You're forgiven, Matt. Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for coming.
Kevin Jackson says hey Rumi.
Oh, Action Jackson.
Michelle again says all right, what you cooking?
I don't want to give it away, Michelle, but as a whole counter full here of different dishes. I started with a little crazy today. Just started cooking when I got up and made a bunch of different things. It's going to end up feeding us for a few days, but I don't want to give it away. What are you cooking?
Lorenzo Capasso says Cotto.
Oh, is that Carm?
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh.
What? And Amy says nice one, Sophia.
Yeah, the voice that's interacting with me is my daughter Sophia. You're going to meet her in a minute. I failed to introduce her last week.
Lisa says, Sophia, you're fired.
Oh. Don't fire her, Lisa.
I'm sorry. I wasn't really thinking.
It's actually hard to read and think at the same time.
It really is.
It's not hard to read and drink at the same time, though. So.
No, sir.
What are you drinking, anybody? You want to share what your aperitivo is? Feel free to share. Amy, what are you guys having? I'm betting you're having spritz.
You have to remember, it's Carm. Ciao.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Ciao, Carm. How are you, buddy?
You have to remember it's lag, so whenever you say stuff, they'll see it like 30 seconds later.
Yeah, it's lag.
Merlot, Michelle said.
Oh, good choice.
Rosé all day, said Virginia Valenzuela.
Excellent idea.
Agreed. Amy says about to make a spritz.
About to make a spritz. Cool. What's our numbers?
Lisa says it's only 4 o'clock here, so I don't think she's drinking.
It's only 4 o'clock.
You have 14 viewers now.
14?
Yeah.
Is there like a magic number? Ask Amy what's the magic number.
Amy, what's the magic?
Amy, what's the magic number?
Amy, what's...
when I say Amy, I'm Amy Fairchild.
The magic number to... She hasn't answered yet. The anticipation.
I know.
Oh.
Please,
You're at
please say it's 15.
You're at 15 now.
15? Boom. Boom.
No one's answered. Lorenzo said homemade wine.
Oh, really? Did his grandpa make it?
I don't know.
You would love
Scott Watson says play some guitar.
Oh, what a good idea. Maybe next time.
And Lorenzo says no grape stomping.
You would love Carmangelo.
I never met him.
Hmm?
I never met him.
No, he's one of my students.
Oh.
Oh, ex-student. He graduated.
Got it.
It's only 6:06.
I know. And you have 17 viewers a time. Think of
But then again, like, where could people possibly be on Saturday night in this day and age? I know you're free people.
Yeah. Marion says, hi, Andrew.
Aunt Mary?
Yeah.
Marion Cotter?
Yeah.
She's related to us too. So, dead giveaway on relations if their last name is the same as ours.
Okay, Lisa's was not the same. Matthew Reed says tequila.
Nice.
Nice. Professor Cotto said,
Who is it? I can't remember.
Is it Aaliyah? Is that Lisa?
Yes,
Easy?
Yeah. Hi, Leah.
Aaliyah Terry.
She's borrowed her parents' Facebook to come see her professor. What's up, Leah?
Yeah, 16 views. I feel like that's enough to start.
But if I start without people who in, then they're going to be lost. We'll just wait a few minutes. I mean, we're pre-gaming people. Or we're starting our pre-game. I think somebody might have begun earlier.
Probably.
You know.
Kevin Jackson says Wadi and Milan.
Okay. Wadi and Milan, Mark Milan. Old friends. Those are college buddies, and Mark Milan and I went to boarding school together.
Oh,
You met
Blair.
Mark. Yeah, you met Mark. Hey, Mark. Happy birthday, belated. Mark's birthday was yesterday.
Marion says, tell us, how are things going in Brooklyn?
Oh, it's awesome. It's really just a great place to be. It's getting a little weird. I mean, we're getting weird. It's getting weirder. But I tell you what, had we not moved to this new big house, we would be killing it. There'd be bodies piled up.
Lisa says, okay, opening wine.
Okay, good. It's 4. She's saying it's 4 o'clock. It's not 10 a.m.
Mark Milan says,
Milan.
thanks.
It's Milan.
Milan. I'm sorry. Says, thanks, bro. Good for it.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
With 2 exclamation points for the enthusiasm.
Hence the bro.
Hence the bro. Carlos says, hello from Rome.
Carlos, ciao.
Hi, Carlos.
Sophia. Oh.
Yes?
No, I was going to say Sophia said hi, but
I know. Yeah, you can hear me.
Are we related?
Are we? Marion says, getting my wine opener now.
Good. Come on, pop it open, people. This is like the first Saturday night in my whole life where I've always been like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're,
And no one has anything to do.
I was like, well, we had plans.
Probably you have this many viewers.
Guys, what's up? Where are we going? Sorry. Come on, captive audience.
The views are just rising. 23.
That's a crowd. That would be breaking some of these states' rules about gathering, right?
Yeah, that's over 5.
Is it 5?
I think so, yeah.
Oh boy. All right, confession, I changed outfits like 4 times, didn't I, Soph?
Yes.
I don't know what happened. Like, middle of the day, all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, wow. Something changed in my mood. I had these bright red pants on before. And it just wasn't working. Thanks to my so honest daughter and her opinions.
Carlos says, I'm having Sangiovese.
Sangiovese. Okay, that's the problem. Sangiovese.
Sangiovese.
Carlos, I'm having a Negroni. And there's a scene tonight when Bill and, I can give it away, but Bill and Jacoby have Negronis at the hotel.
Paul Turlick says hi.
Oh, PT, what's up, man?
Oh, PT.
You know that Lucy's going to UMass Amherst.
Really?
Yeah.
I know someone.
Hey, Paul T, Sophia got into Syracuse. Mm-hmm. That's where he went.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome, I'm not going, but...
She might.
I might. Lorenzo says, will there be a costume change?
Maybe. Maybe. We'll see how it goes. How much?
Sylvia, oh god, Scogiamiagilio says, in my wife's Facebook, this is Nisco Buono.
Oh, ciao, Nico. Come stai? Wow, that was painful.
Excuse me. Linda says, change each chapter.
What's that?
To change each chapter.
Change
your
the shape.
outfit.
Okay, I'm like Madonna in concert.
Cassandra Santoro
Oh, hi, Cassandra.
says, ciao from Long Island.
Ciao.
Got my wine. Decided I'm having Aperol for Monday to Friday quarantine happy hours. Haha. Cheers.
Cheers. Good idea. Great idea.
Is Negroni start with a J?
No.
What's Jagronis? Says Amy Fairchild.
Jagroni?
Was
Is
it
it typo?
Typo?
Possibly, yeah. So it could be a new cocktail that they whipped up there in Boston.
Who knows? Nikki Abat-Lisella says hi from New Jersey.
Hi, Nikki.
Todd Breitling
Tito.
says let's go Flyers.
Let's go. I was about to say that too.
Yeah, me too.
You know what the Flyers are, so?
No. Baseball team.
Oh, almost. There's sticks involved.
Basketball.
There's sticks involved.
Hockey.
Boom.
There you go. Okay, you have 25 and it's 6:12. Do you want to start? Or...
We'll start at 6:15, which is at the nice even time. People are probably like, oh shit, I forgot about Kato.
Oh, I'm sure. Are they like,
Oh.
where is that? Dorothy D. Marzo
Yep.
says, Sangiovese is my favorite. Currently having a white blend from Vianza Vineyards Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, you're killing me, Sophia.
Okay, I don't speak Italian.
Great, Dorothy, that sounds wonderful. I mean, it sounds wonderful you're having it. It doesn't sound wonderful out of my daughter's mouth.
Okay.
All right.
All right then.
I'm such a demanding father. You must pronounce your wines correctly, child. Give me your phone.
How goes the new book set in Rome? Question mark asked by Carlos.
Yeah, so you're giving it away, but there's a sequel to this in the works. So I'm writing it right now, and it's a sequel to Cucina Tipica. It's called Cucina Romana, and it's set in Rome. It's coming along nicely. I got some great ideas. It's really good. It's coming along. Thank you for asking. A lot of Negronis being drunk in this.
Oh, Amy Fairchild says it was a play on words, Jacoby or whatever the character's name is.
Jagroni. Nice. She's smarter than us.
She's smarter than us.
She's definitely smarter than us. While we're mentioning Amy Fairchild, my cousin of sorts, she's the girlfriend and quarantine cellmate of my cousin, Thomas Giuliano. In case you didn't get my notices about those two, they're wonderful musicians out of Boston. They are doing a series from their living room every Wednesday night on Amy's Facebook page. It's at 7 o'clock. Her name is Amy Fairchild. I don't need to spell it for you. And it's great. They write beautiful. She writes beautiful songs and plays wonderfully. And Thomas is just an amazing guitar player. And they just work together. I don't know. Go figure. Got a little Buckingham Nicks thing going right now in the good days, at least.
Scott Watson says name 12 people from freshman year's zoo.
Oh God. I think they're all. That was the hall we lived in our dorm.
Marion says, what a great time to learn Italian while in quarantine.
Yeah.
Would that be my next goal?
No, definitely.
No.
Yeah.
She also says looking forward to a sequel.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. I have some other publishing news to share with you later before we clock off here, but it also involves a sequel.
Someone named Christian Leach says very excited for the reading.
Thank you, Christian. Appreciate it.
And that's all the comments.
Is
for
it
now.
6:15?
It is 6:15.
I feel like over the next 60 seconds, there's going to be a magical pop in ours. What was our numbers?
It's still 22.
22. All right, 22 is a crowd. I once had a reading at Marymount Manhattan College where one person showed up, and the person who showed up was the woman who invited me to read. And I got there, and it was just her in this big ballroom in the conference room. And I'm like, where is everybody? She's like, well, it's finals week, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, should we just go have a drink? She's like, no, I want you to read to me. And I was like, it's just us. And She sat down and I read her chapter. It was really awkward.
Marion says, teach your daughter important phrases like, I'd like a glass of wine, please.
Oh, I'm hearing that one a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some securing of valuables around here.
Excuse me!
Yeah. No, she's great. Love her. It's awesome having Soph out of her room. She was in quarantine before the quarantine.
Oh!
Quarantine joke.
Scott Watson says, do you have any books with pictures only?
No, but that's not a bad idea. They're probably a lot easier, less time consuming to write. I'm blowing through my cocktail. Sophie's begging me for some of this. I'm telling you, you do not want to go anywhere. The gin and 18-year-olds, no. We'll work on this later. Okay? All right. What do you think?
I think you're at 24, which is 2 more viewers than before.
Okay.
So
I think I'm going to wait till we hit 30.
Well, what happens? You've been at this number for about like the whole time. So I'm guessing.
I mean, you have somewhere to go?
Yes.
back to your room is not a place to go. It doesn't count.
So would you like to get started or new?
What's up, some votes?
Amy says, okay, start at 6:17. It's your manager speaking.
Okay. Amy is my manager. You know what's really funny thing about this? Not to be like, hokey, but there's so many people from different parts of my life here. I have friends here that I grew up with. I have friends here I went to middle school with in St. Louis, Missouri, which people don't recognize a lot. That I spent 3 years living in St. Louis, which I loved. It was great. And I went to high school in Boston. I have friends from there here, Amy. I have my cousins from Boston, but Amy Darsper is from Boston, from Lincoln Sudbury. I have friends here from college. I have friends here from boarding school. I've had a really sort of itinerant life, and I have friends here from work that I work with now, and friends here that I teach now, and I have so many friends.
Amy says it's 6:18.
I'm talking about my friends here. I'm counting up my friends on more than one hand. All right, fine. Want to do it?
Up to you. You're down to 21, so
people are leaving?
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, thank you for coming to Casa Cado for our second installment in the Cucina Tipica quarantine reading series. The idea behind it is to share passages from the book that revolve around food, because food is such an important factor in our lives and something that I know many of us are reaching to now in this time of crisis for comfort. We're learning to appreciate how valuable it is to eat well and be well as a result, and to spend time together, especially around the table, enjoying food. I can't wait to do that once this is all over. I also wanted to apologize for last week's episode where I failed to introduce my family properly. We have Pam Cotto, my wife, with the dogs upstairs, Double J, Julian downstairs, yelling at LeBron James on the NBA 2K, and Sophie Bogosi. Come here, girl. I didn't introduce her to her. She's working for us. She is my Snapchatting, TikToking mini-me. Get a load of her. Look, we are... She looks just like... Thankfully, you have your mother's brains. Right? And my looks. So her looks are better than that too, but at least you got her brains. So I'm deeply appreciative of being able to spend some time with Sophia. And I thank her for her help. The Italians have a term called, one of the shout out, of course, thank all of you for coming. I really appreciate you being here this evening. It's it's really important to me. I know it's an incredibly difficult time, and we are need to sort of look out for each other, look out for ourselves, of course, as well. That whole takes a village thing is written way large right now, and the idea behind this is just to bring us together, to have something to do on Saturday night, to sort of conjure that spirit of community, especially as it revolves around food and wine. Those are certainly my favorite times in life, and I'm happy that you're here. The reading series itself is featuring passages from the book that deal with food. There's a lot of food in the book. All my writing has food in it. I mean, I just can't help it. I can't get away from it. You know, it's my recurring theme. And this book in particular has 24 scenes where food plays an important part. I will read you just those scenes with a couple of different non-food scenes interspersed for context. After we finish with the reading, I also need to make up for a mistake I made again last week, was not making any food. I had people to my house, into my kitchen, I didn't cook them anything. Right? So today I cooked you some food. It's on the counter. I'll explain it to you when we're done, and then we'll have a few more words, and I'll keep rambling till we're down to 0.
Yeah?
Yeah. Context. I'll pick up where I left off last time, but if those of you who missed last week, the idea behind the book is that there's a disheartened American who arrives in Italy on holiday and decides he never wants to leave. That disheartened American is by the name of Jacoby Pines. Hence the Jagroni, the drink that Amy and Thomas made up for him. He is a millennial. He lost his job in New York in pretty spectacular fashion. He made a could be considered homophobic reference to a friend at work who is gay, and they were joking about something together as they normally do. That joke went public. The cancel culture came crashing down on him, and he didn't just lose his job, but he lost his reputation and pretty much any other opportunity for immediate employment. He went into a depression and sat around his Brooklyn apartment all day, which is something that's definitely ringing true right now. And his fiancée, who's a travel writer, her name is Claire St. James, decides that Jacoby would love Italy. And he has a really magical palate. He's gifted with his ability to determine tastes and appreciate the pleasure of distinct tastes. And she knows that, even though he's never been to Italy, that he would love Italy. He's of Italian descent, who's half his mother's of Italian descent. And she arranges for a extended writing assignment in Italy for a year. So the book begins when the idea is that he will go there for a year, get his shit together, come back to America, and they can resume the life they were having before his collapse. The book begins with Jacoby and Claire arriving in the south of France. They take a rental car, drive through the French Riviera into the Italian Riviera. They spend the night at this hotel in Rapallo, one of the Italian Riviera towns, a really swanky town, in this great hotel. They have a beautiful meal in their bed, in their room. They go out for a great meal at a seafood osteria. They hop in the car, drive down to Tuscany. In Tuscany, they live in the hills south of Florence. Jacoby has a secret. Something he's never shared with Claire. His mother died when he was very young. His father died the year before his professional collapse. He's an only child, so he's essentially an orphan. But when he was going through his father's belongings after his passing, he found a picture that belonged to his mother. It was a woman sitting on the lawn of a grand villa, and all there is on the photo for identification purposes is a name, the Villa Floria Zenobini, and the year 1939. And Jacoby thinks that this photograph is somehow a potential connection to family in Italy. So when Claire announces this idea that she's going to have them move to Italy for a year, he thinks it's not just serendipity but fate, and that the picture is going to somehow deliver him from all this tragedy he's going through and help him find a home. So they arrive in Florence to stay in this barn behind the villa that they've rented for the year. The barn behind the villa is exactly where Sophia and I and Pam Cotto lived how many years ago? 16 years ago for an entire year. So I set the book in that very setting where we have spent so much time. What's the problem, Soph?
No, I'm just reading. I can't see.
Is someone saying I'm talking too much?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want you to shut up.
Just shut up and read. And I'm just providing some context here. They get there. Jacoby goes next door to has a magical meal with his landlord Paolo, who's a widower, retired surgeon. And then him and Claire take off on an excursion into Umbria and Le Marche for her purposes, her writing purposes. And they stay very well in Umbria and then Le Marche. Take a couple of great meals, which I read last time. They come back into Tuscany, and they show up in Panzano, which is this really spectacular town, right dead center in the heart of Chianti country. The previous reading ended with them sitting in the piazza as the sun was setting over the Val d'Or, which is the Valley of Gold, drinking Brunello di Montalcino, which is the granddaddy of Italian wines, by the glass at $8 a glass, to boot, and thinking just how special this place is. And Jacoby's thinking to himself, him and Claire have some issues for sure. This whole thing is quite dubious, right? He's thinking to himself that, hey, I could do this forever. Her and I might work it out. We might not just stay here for a year, but stay here forever. And it's sort of like you can tell by the tone and the prose that that's sort of wishful thinking on his part, and that sort of magical thinking on his part starts to fall apart in these subsequent scenes. Their little moment of intimacy in the piazza is broken up by Claire's cousin, Dolores, who's just my favorite character in the book. She's just hysterical. She lives off a trust fund. She's from London. Claire's family is from England, and she's just wild and outrageous. And her and Jacoby and Claire get along very well. They go up there having dinner that night. This is our first scene coming up, I swear, at this restaurant owned by a butcher in Panzano. Now there is if you know anything about Tuscan culture, and even, we're good to say, the whole country of Italy, you know who Dario Cecchini is. He is the world's most famous butcher, and that might seem like an odd title for most of us, especially my vegetarian friends, but Dario Cecchini is a legend. He's worshipped by Springsteen and Jack Nicholson and me. I think Dario and I are friends. I've been to his shop 25 times in my life. I've written about him on numerous occasions. He's just a magical person who really embodies what it is about cherishing food. If you're interested in Dario, you can read some of the articles I've written about him, or even better yet, go see episode 2 in season 6 of A Chef's Table, where they feature him in a really great expose. For my purposes, though, I couldn't make this butcher in Panzano Dario because I needed to create some sort of romantic tension between Claire and the butcher. And I was thinking of like the bullfighter Romero in The Sun Also Rises, where there's this conflict created by this local legendary figure. So I took all the auspices of Dario Cecchini's Panzano presence and reincarnated it into like this sort of young up and coming butcher, right? Who they all find quite attractive, and not surprising. I'm getting to it. So we have Dolores. Dolores shows up. So they're having dinner at the butcher shop restaurant. Dolores shows up with 2 guys named Marco, 2 Italians. If you know anything about Italy, there's a lot of dudes named Marco. And I think of the Marcos of Italy like the Brads and Chads of America. They're not the same type, not preppy types, but there's that familiar, that common, right? They're Italian dudes who wish they were American badasses, basically. Right? They ride their Ducati motorcycles and smoke their American cigarettes and wear blue jeans and t-shirts, and they're Italian types. And they're everywhere. So she shows up with 2 dates, right? She's got 2 Marcos with her, and they're all going to this butcher shop for a meal. Trigger warning: there is some terminology here that refers to gay men in a pejorative. I'm not going to say the words. I just don't want to. I will say blank when that word comes up. You can fill in the blank any way you see fit. And here we go. The Marcos stepped on. Good start. Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Try again.
The Marcos stepped on their cigarettes and straightened off their bikes. Dolores swaggered toward them with her hands above her head. "How do you know them?" Claire whispered a few steps behind her. "Met them at the auto grill," she said over her shoulder. The filling station and eatery over the autostrada. Claire stopped. "Picking up boys at rest stops, are we now, Cucina?" Dolores kept going. "Perché no? C'è il posto qui tutti gli uomini vanno." That's the place where all the men go. Jacoby tugged Claire along, imagining clever Doris perched at the rest stop cafe, sipping a latte, eyeballing motorcyclists and sports car aficionados who stopped for breaks during their weekend rallies. One trip down the autostrada was enough for Jacoby to know that driving was a recreational sport for Italian men, and 1 week in Italy was enough to know that the overwhelming majority of Italian men were damn good looking. They really are. No wonder so many English women came to Italy. Introductions were made in Italian. The 2 Marcos ogled Claire, gave Jacoby indifferent nods and hard handshakes, whispering to each other as they went inside. The one-floor restaurant of cobbled stone was alone on a knoll, flattened for a parking lot above the village. The open interior had white plaster walls, polished plank floors, and a wood beam ceiling. Wide windows allowed for views of the spectacular valley that hoarded the last remnants of daylight in the sky above the hills. The tables were modern and communal, wood with metal legs and matching metal chairs, adorned with place settings, carafes of red wine, and a single and sarcastic fennel bulb as a centerpiece. Along the width on one side of the rectangular room, a wide iron grill lay over a pyramid of split wood under a massive ventilation chute. Aside the indoor grilling area was a stool and a microphone on a 3-foot stage. There was one sitting for dinner, which began at 8 o'clock and lasted many courses, all meat. It seemed promising to Jacoby, but contrived somewhat, especially for Italy. Still, even with the 2 assholes tagging along, he was happy to be there, together again with Dolores and Claire in a band back together kind of way. The room, soon full, held a pre-theater tension. The grill flamed and the scent of wood smoke filled the room. Dolores flirted with the Marcos, who paused from her attentions to shoot Jacoby occasional looks of disdain. Jacoby was really starting to hate them and their arrogance. He thought meatheads were an American-only thing. These guys seemed like the direct descendants of the morons in high school who called him blank because his hair was long. Claire explored the room, her iPhone out for photos, her charm out for conversation with guests and employees. Jacoby quaffed his carafe and began to feel sour in his mouth from too much wine and not any food. A ping of anxiety appeared somewhere under his rib cage. He pulled at the skin in front of his throat and fought the burning sensation in his gut. Baskets of bread appeared, and Jacoby gobbled enough to soak up the acid in his stomach and partake in the refreshed carafe in front of him. Claire returned and noticed his boozy countenance. "Slow down, cowboy," she said playfully. "The show hasn't even started yet." Soon it began. "Ladies and gentlemen," the butcher announced, in a grand voice with broken English, raising the slabs of meat over his head, "I am Fabrizio Franchetti, and it is a pleasure to meet you." That was supposed to be a pun. Meat.
Good.
Yeah, it was fun. On the page, it's hysterical. The cooler was stuffed with bistecca fiorentina, a 3-inch thick porterhouse from local cows, simply prepared. Probably the single most recognized dish from the region, the crown jewel of Cucina Tipica, typical cuisine. After the large grill face was lined with dozens of steaks, the host, on a platform in front of the grill, theatrically salted and peppered the steaks, then chopped lemons and minced rosemary. The steaks were quickly flipped by an assistant wielding long tongs and delivered to the cutting table to rest before being surgically hacked into chunks and placed on ceramic platters where they were dressed with local olive oil, coarse salt, squeezed lemon, and sprinkled rosemary. A large pot on a burner to the side held stewed white beans with baby tomatoes, which were ladled into ceramic bowls and given a swirl of fresh oil. A small crew of waitresses ferried platters to each table, though the host himself, the fabulous Fabrizio Franchetti, delivered a specially chosen platter to the table of the American food writer Claire St. James and her 4 guests. He put an enormous platter of meat and the bowl of beans directly in front of Claire. "I hope you have hunger, Americana." Claire played along and smiled politely before moving the platter and bowl to the center of the table. She stood up to introduce herself professionally with an extended hand, but the butcher held up his own, as they were not clean enough for shaking. "We will talk after the meal, no?" "Yes," Claire said, "that would be great. Thank you." The butcher smiled and nodded and then turned to the rest of the table. "Please, enjoy. It is a pleasure to have you with me here." Dolores wiggled her fingers in a coquettish hello. The Marcos nodded with respect. Jacoby leaned forward to take in the smell of the steak, which reduced him to nothing more than his carnivorous instincts. Drool pumped from his saliva glands. The butcher motioned for a server to refill their carafes and returned to his post center stage as Jacoby sucked on his own tongue. My, Dolores purred, of all the babes in Babeland. Jacoby grabbed the utensils. That was supposed to be English accent. It came out Southern. My bad. Jacoby grabbed the utensils. Jacoby grabbed the utensils and portioned hunks of meat onto the plate of his cousin and the plate of his fiancée before serving himself. Fuck the Marcos. But Dolores' point, even in a meat-induced frenzy, was not lost on Jacoby. Italy was a country full of beautiful men, but that butcher just might be the best looking of them all. Still, Jacoby felt no jealous threat. Even with enough alcohol in him to inspire irrationality, the butcher struck Jacoby as silly, and Claire didn't seem too impressed either beyond the potential for a freelance story. Jacoby was more concerned with the Marcos, who leered at Claire in a swarthy European way and said things that she swatted away yet made Dolores laugh. But Jacoby couldn't even attempt to translate due to distance and the dialect of the Marcos who were on holiday from Calabria. Animosity for Dolores and her tendency to impose strange men upon them began to rise in Jacoby until he forked a piece of meat and placed it in his mouth. The flavor was as profound and complex as any beef he'd ever tasted. Steak in the States was bland, in need of sauce, but this simply prepared choice cut was perfectly grilled, seared on the outside, rare and warm internally, helped by hints of lemon and rosemary and coarse salt, while letting the flavor of the meat itself dominate. Amazing, transcendental, good Lord. Jacoby was aware of the ambience around him. Chatter in English and Italian, and the sound of the grill as flames licked more meat, the butcher bellowing somewhere to someone about something, but he was immersed in the pleasure of the bistecca, which even changed the way the wine tasted as an accompaniment. The beans, toothy and savory, made for a perfect match, and Jacoby vowed to never eat potatoes with meat again. He remained lost in the moment until his plate was empty. When he looked up, the plundered original platter was being replaced with another, hosting a hunk of meat fresh from the grill and delivered by an attentive server. The Marcos pulled the plate towards their end of the table, but a smiling Claire moved it back to the center as Jacoby and the Marcos stared at each other like junkyard dogs ready to battle over a bone. Calma, calma, Claire begged sarcastically. C'è basta per tutti. She's saying there's enough for all. What happens next, just to keep us in context here before I move on to the next passage, is that Jacoby gets drunk, the Marcos start picking on him a little bit, they make fun of him for something that's a little bit blue, you can read about yourself if you want to get into it, and they have a fight. And he leaves the restaurant in order to sort of not ruin Claire's story in progress. He goes to the car and just takes off, right? He has a panic attack when he gets outside. He's sitting there in the night in the middle of Tuscany and his adrenaline's pumping, his anxiety's rising, he has a panic attack. He jumps in the car and just drives dead into the night, not knowing anywhere where he's going. There's actually really a great simile in here for my writer friends. I say the night was dark as a dog's nose. Dark as a... You ever seen a dog's nose? It was supposed to be... They're just like, oh, good one. Yeah! Dog's noses are so dark. Anyway, he drives all night long. He's lost, right? Bugs are splattering on the windshield. He's trying to stay sober by opening the windows. It's cold. He's just freaking out, right? He eventually makes it home, back to their town. He finds his way by just like doing concentric circles. Finds his way back to the village. He drives up the driveway as the sun's coming up, right? The landlord Paolo is out front of the property with a gun. Right? And there's a Jeep rolling down the dirt path that leads up to their property. And on the Jeep is a Shingali, a wild boar, kind of like this, but like bigger and fiercer, right? You know, blood dripping off it, and all these wild-haired hunters with the top down, like having a party, right? Paolo's screaming at them, blah, 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 and the car with the hunters goes by. I'm telling you this because it's important to the story. And also Paolo says, oh, by the way, you know, your fiance is waiting for you inside. And Jacoby's like, oh, shit. And so he goes inside. Claire is there, furious, like wondering what happened there. Why'd you make that scene? Why'd you run away like that? Why'd you leave me there? Her and Dolores had to drive around all night looking for him, and they were worried sick. And he's like, yeah. I mean, he's kind of a fuck up, and he is. I mean, I like the character because he's so flawed. This is one of those moments. She's just sick of like carrying his water. and they're about to really go at it and possibly break up. And Dolores comes down the stairs, interrupts them, and makes this joke, which I think is possibly the funniest thing I've ever written. You have to read it yourself. It's a sexually related joke about you know how she had to compensate for the fact that she lost her 2 dates. I think it's funny. But it's so funny to Claire and Jacoby that the fight just ends. You know, those moments where like it's really tense, someone says something funny or does something funny, and this attention goes right out of the room. It's one of those moments. I think it gives Jacoby like life for another day. They end up taking a case of Prosecco out of the trunk of Dolores' car, making breakfast there at the barn. Then they head into Florence proper for the day. And this is Jacoby's first trip into Florence. And this little quick passage here isn't food related, but it really does a lot of work explaining Jacoby's situation. And it's important to recognize too that at the end of this scene where they go into Florence, Claire mentions to Jacoby that, hey, I'm going to go on another excursion tomorrow for work. Why doesn't Dolores accompany me instead of you? And he's like, okay. You ever been broken up with? How many once, I think. And that feeling when someone starts dropping those hints, right? This is one of those hints being dropped at Jacoby that Claire's going to take Dolores instead of him on her next excursion. What she says to him, like, hey, we need you to figure out, the immediate resources around us, and so why don't you spend your time doing that as to give him a purpose? And he's like, cool with me, because he can start looking into that photograph he has in anyway. So they drive into Florence proper. The drive into Florence was fast and spectacular. Dolores insisted on driving and that Claire and Jacoby sit in the back like an important couple being chauffeured, though Claire insisted on the top up to keep her hair from tangling. They went away from the village on the ridge road and swooped down into the ramparts of Florence proper, past low-slung and colorless apartment houses and commercial enterprises of stone and cement. Soon they arrived in a shaded, rolling area of elegant villas behind high metal gates on a winding, cypress-lined road. At the top, Dolores quickly pivoted into a parking lot crowded with tourist buses with an open expanse beyond. She parked in the far corner, yet Jacoby could already sense the elevation by the sweeping views of the hills and valleys to the south. He wondered which hill their little village was nestled beyond. "This way, lovelies," Dolores ordered. On the other side of the lot, beyond the corroding replica of David that fronted the piazza named after his creator, Michelangelo, lay the city of Florence, a spoon circle of terracotta and stone and pastel, split horizontally by the nearby river Arno and surrounded by verdant hills like the lush hood framing the face of a movie star. Jacoby felt wonder rise through his sternum and out his nose. It seemed like a model, a tiny replica of plastic pieces, of a make-believe place, not a real place, in real size, made by the hands of men many centuries ago. A city of domes and towers and palaces, of ceramic tiles and stone, of 4 bridges that span the Arno, including the famous Ponte Vecchio, lined with shops of pastel facades. From high above, Jacoby wandered through the tourists who snapped pictures and pointed. He stood atop the paved slope that led down the hill toward the magnificent city, but he held still, fighting the current of enticement, the beckoning, savoring the feeling of anticipation like a child has atop a long water slide above an enormous pool. "Don't just stand there," Dolores chided. "Get moving, asshat."
Asshat.
I stole that from you.
Yes, you did, asshat.
So Dolores, they have a splendid day in Florence. I don't know if you've ever been to the city of Florence. It's just spectacular, and it is, where I may end up at some point in my life forever, or Le Marche. I love it. It's a quaint, beautiful city. Kind of reminds me size-wise of like an Italian version of Boston. They have a spectacular day in there. They walk down the hill. They take a pizza at the Mercato del Centrale, and then they wander back up the hill and go home. And it's on the way home that Jacoby broaches this idea, that Claire, broaches the idea to Jacoby that she's going to take Dolores with her. Right? The next day, Jacoby wanders into the village. He walks down from the barn through the olive groves, right? We have these winding trails through them into this tiny village that supports their immediate area. It is here in this village where Jacoby meets Bill. He's asking around the shop owners with his terrible Italian if anyone knows this photograph he has, right? With the name of the villa Floria Zanobini on the back. And the people in the village, no one speaks English there. And his Italian's atrocious, as mentioned, are having a really hard time communicating to him this idea of how to move forward. They keep saying the Americano. He thinks they're talking about him, right? But actually there is an American in the village named Bill. Bill is based on my friend, Bill Guyan, who's I met through my dear friend Carlos, who's joining us tonight, in Rome. I took Bill from Rome, placed him in Florence. He has a massive significance in the story in that he becomes not just Jacoby's friend, but a catalyst for the adventure that ensues. So those two meet up in the village eventually. They take a breakfast together. There's a funny line in the breakfast meeting where Bill says the only thing, he's an expat of 35 years. He says the only thing he misses about America is breakfast. And he makes Jacoby a big old American breakfast with Italian hints to it. So it's stewed tomatoes and sausage and eggs. And and Jacoby just happens to mention him. Hey, but by the way, does this photograph mean anything to you? And Bill flips, just absolutely loses his shit, drops everything, runs out of the hotel where he manages, and hops on his motorini with Jacoby in tow. They end up flying as fast as they can through the woods, to this villa. He knows where the villa is, and he knows where the villa is because it was the property of his lover, Filippo, who had died. They met in Rome, fell in love, moved back, had a wonderful life there in and around the Trastevere region of Rome, working at a university which I was, in my mind, inspired by John Cabot University, where all my dear friends work, especially Carlos. And they fell in love and eventually moved to retire back in Florence, where he was from, at his family's estate. When they got there, Filippo got sick with cancer and died. His family excommunicated Bill, not particularly proud of the fact that their prince of a son is in love with another man. They take all his belongings, all his inheritance, even Bill's resources as a non-Italian in America, banking through his partner, and Bill's sort of stranded with this hotel. He's hoping that the picture will re-ingratiate him to Filippo's family, because it is clearly an indication they have lineage in America. Bill's freaking out. They go back to they strike out kind of at the hotel. Oh, at the villa. I'm sorry. They're told that the matriarch, the last living relative, Filippo's mom, right, is holed up somewhere in the city of Florence in a palace, a secret palace marked only by a statue of a cat. I based this on a cat that's on the ledge in a building in Rome. I thought it was just so unbelievably romantic. So they had to go into Florence and find the marble cat. That's like their goal, right? It sounds like a long shot. Before they do so, of course, they must plan over the course of the meal. So they get back to the village. Jacoby goes home to the barn and cleans up. He meets Bill back at the hotel in the village for dinner. The village was dark when Jacoby arrived. Between a smart car and a three-wheeled Ape, those little three-wheeled vehicles, he parked in an angled spot across from the hotel, facing the piazza. There were no other vehicles and no people around. Everything was closed, serene. The church bell rang 8 times before Jacoby took an easy breath and pushed the buzzer beside the hotel's front door. Bill quickly answered, dressed nicely in a tailored Oxford shirt, slacks and suede loafers, a starched white apron around his waist. Please, come in, he said with a slightly decorous bow. The foyer was lit from a lone light in the sitting area. Light from the dining area in back illuminated the hallway. The front desk was dark except for a desktop monitor that blinked with a Dell logo. All the tables in the dining room were covered in white tablecloth without settings, except for one in the middle, where 2 places were set with patterned ceramic bowls over matching plates at either end of the table that could seat 6, but only had chairs at each end. The light from dangling fixtures had been adjusted to just less than bright. Atrium windows at the far end held a reflection of the room. Care for a cocktail? Bill asked, already walking toward a small bar. Jacoby hadn't noticed it in the morning, a cozy, dark corner made of oak, fronted by 3 stools. Bill lifted the counter and stepped behind the bar. Jacoby sat on a stool. What do you recommend? He asked. The house special is a Negroni. Jacoby looked around the empty house. Filippo and I had one together every night, both here and in Rome. I do love them, but I refuse to drink alone. Well, I refuse to drink a Negroni alone, that is. I'm here for you, Jacoby joked, patting his heart with mock sentimentality. Bill smiled and whisked 2 long cocktail glasses from below the bar and added some ice. Bottles of gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth were tossed in the glass and given a quick spin with a long spoon. Orange peel was sliced off and used as garnish. Bill presented the translucent ruby cocktail with a nod. To a magnificent day, Bill toasted. I got a toast. I slurped that. To a magnificent day. The men touched glasses and drank. It both smelled and tasted a bit medicinal to Jacoby at first, before the gin shot through, balanced by the sweet vermouth to create a fine, heady balance. Yikes, Jacoby said. That is pretty good. The perfect aperitivo, Bill declared, closing his eyes to savor the pleasure and sensory memory. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a little work to do in the kitchen in preparation of our supper. Can I help? No, but thank you. Enjoy your cocktail and forgive my absence. Bill took his drink and hurried across the room and through the kitchen door. Jacoby sat in the quiet and surveyed his surroundings. He loved the ambiance of bars and dining rooms, the ceilings and floors and walls, stone and brick and wood, the bottles and glasses and tables set for guests. He found wine racks beautiful, and Bill had a cool one carved into a stone wall, crisscrossed and filled with hundreds of bottles. The room soon smelled of onions, and Jacoby relaxed on the bar stool like it was a hammock. They started with a spring minestrone, generous with pieces of artichoke, asparagus, and carrots in a broth of pureed onions and leeks with a snap of garlic. Torn basil and spinach added to the texture and perfume. On the side was a charred piece of country bread rubbed with a tomato. Bill had grown all the ingredients in the garden out back, except the asparagus, which he found wild on the side of the road. I'm sorry. I was wondering what you were looking for, Jacoby commented on the asparagus. He'd seen Bill in passing, walking along the side of the road with a stick. Oh, you've seen me? A few times. I forage every morning, first thing, Bill said, and again in the afternoon if there's time. Just for asparagus? Oh no, there's all sorts of wonders growing wild out here. Mushrooms and spring onions, leeks, garlic, frutti di bosco, fruits of the woods. And of course, the greatest prize of all, the exotic tartufo. Truffle, Jacoby said. Very good, Bill said with a nod. Have you had the pleasure? A few times now. Well, you were very lucky. They are my absolute favorite, but they are becoming harder and harder to find, especially around here. Well, maybe I could help, Jacoby offered. Bill smiled. I have some young cacciatore, hunters, on retainer, but they are far more interested in the beasts who eat the tartufo than the tartufo itself. Not that I can blame them for that, since cingale are magnificent, especially when well fed on something most people can't find or afford. I've seen them, Jacoby said. Bill's chin rose. Cingale? No, Jacoby said, disappointed in disappointing his new friend. The cacciatori, the hunters, they hunt in the hills near the property where we live, even though they're not supposed to be there. Where is it precisely that lets you do live? Bill asked. In a barn behind the villa in the hills, just off the road that leads to Florence. Ah, Bill smiled, a high rent district. If you say so. I do, Bill said, matter of fact, but please, and forgive me for getting around to this so late. What has brought you here for 1 year? Are you some sort of heritage hunter? Jacoby laughed out loud and nearly choked before being able to explain. He explained all about him and Claire and his job back in New York and how he lost it, etc. And of course how the photograph was informing his mission there. Over fresh fettuccine with fava beans and grated pecorino cheese, Jacoby told Bill his story and the story of him and Claire and their primary reasons for being in Italy. Bill was a terrific listener, tending to their needs at the table while remaining focused on Jacoby's narrative. Fired for homophobia, eh? Bill mused, and Jacoby told him the story of the siren. Rubbing his beard, a sign of progress, he said. Yeah, but, Jacoby protested, it was a joke. Oh, I know, Bill interrupted. Your innocence is obvious, but it's just that I grew up gay in the 50s and 60s in East Texas. I was called blank and blank more than I was called Bill. And while I hate to see anyone treated unfairly, there's a sense of redemption knowing that that kind of language and the brutality that usually comes with it is no longer as acceptable, and that gay people and their advocates can be entitled to justice on occasion, not to mention the same sense of absurdity and overreaction that others have been entitled to for so long. I guess, Jacoby muttered, feeling both wronged and foolish for his self-pity. Bill refilled their wine glasses with a round violet blend that Jacoby recognized from Paolo's collection. With a raised glass and no precursor, he said, and here we are. The wine-soaked main course was a rabbit loin wrapped in pancetta, served over fluffy polenta, dotted with chopped green olives. Bill and Jacoby ate and drank and spoke of their looming adventure into Florence proper, in search of a matriarch holed up in a palace marked by a cat statue. They laughed at their dim prospects, which were soothed by the magnificent meal and flowing wine. Bill offered a glimmer of hope. He knew a native son, a famous restaurateur and unofficial Florentine historian who might be able to help them and could certainly provide a decent meal. At least they had a plan and prospects for a solid lunch. So the next day, they go into Florence looking for the cat. And the first person they're going to seek some information from before they leave, actually, is the local butcher, not their king, the butcher in the village, right? Butchers in Italy are not just the famous types. The everyday butcher in a village are more like mayors in some ways. They know all the people and all the doings. They usually have been around for generations with the same family doing the same thing. So Bill thinks that the local butcher in town might know some information about their photograph. They go see him. Right? First thing in the morning, they go into the back of the butcher shop where he's making sausage. In the middle of his sausage making, the first thing in the morning, which can be kind of gruesome to look at, right? Sausage making is not known to be pretty. The butcher takes a piece of bread, wipes some raw sausage on it, and hands pieces to Bill and Jacoby to eat. And Jacoby has to eat this piece of raw sausage in the back of a butcher shop, which is kind of funny, I guess. Actually, that's a treat. It happened to me. I'll tell you when I see you next. I won't. Okay. She's shaking. Then they go into Florence proper to find this person this famous Florentine restaurateur. The famous Florentine restaurateur is actually a real person. His name is Fabio Picchi. He is the head of a sort of a mini sort of conglomerate of restaurants in the Sant'Ambrosia neighborhood of Florence called under the Cibreo auspices. Cibreo itself, the ristorante, is among the best restaurants in all of the world. I've eaten there numerous times. I once ate a lamb's brain there. Well, I ate 2 bites of a lamb's brain there before they took it away. It's a great restaurant. There's also a Cibreo cafe and a Cibreo trattoria, more casual, and this place called the Teatro del Sale, the Theater of Salt, which Fabio and his real-life wife, Maria Cassi, own. She's an actress, entertainer, really, a performer. So she kind of reminds me of like Lucille Ball a little bit. And she does these one-woman shows that are spectacular. They opened this theater in the Cibreo area where it was an old, where do nuns hang out?
The church.
No, never mind. Not a monastery, but an abbey. Thank you. Where they they converted into this beautiful theater. It's a huge open room and a big, beautiful kitchen that you can see through the glass. The kitchen is on full display to the guests there. And one of the unique things about it for Italy, for sure, is that it's communal sitting. Right? So Italians don't do buffets, right? They don't sit next to people they don't know. This has all that in there, so you can watch the show once you finish your meal. So you watch the people make your meal, they bring it out, they put it on tables, then you pivot your seats to watch the stage where people perform, right? And sometimes if you're lucky, it's Maria Cassi, and she's spectacular. So they go to meet Fabio, because Bill and him are old friends from his journalism days. He'd written about some of Fabio's cookbooks and things like that. They can't meet him for lunch because Fabio's too busy making this special artichoke flan, this formato. So Bill and Jacoby take a lampredotto sandwich. That is a sandwich of stewed stomach lining. I know, I'm grossing out the vegetarians here, even the carnivores, right? But Italians come from cucina povera, right? The poverty cuisine. And they eat everything, man. Go into a butcher shop in Italy, you'll see like the spines with the nerve endings there to make stew or something, I don't know. The eyes of animals are eaten because they didn't have a choice not to eat it all, right? And they keep, that's part of their tradition. So some of these dishes are still served. So they take the lampredotto sandwich and then they walk off there, and they're going to meet Fabio that night for dinner back at the Teatro del Sale, where they'll have a meal there, and Maria's going to perform. Right? So their day off in Florence, the afternoon off in Florence, they walk to the Piazza di Signoria. Jacoby, Bill has friends who, through Filippo, who own a hotel there or at the Piazza Signoria, and they give Jacoby a pass to the Uffizi Museum. Bill's been there zillions of times. He wants to sit in the lobby, take a siesta, right, while Jacoby goes sees the museum. He goes into the Uffizi, if you've ever been there before, right? With a pass is quite a privilege because the lines are huge. So he's snaking around the corner. He has this guest pass. He walks past all that, walks in there, and is overwhelmed by the size of the museum. There's a lot of art to see. A lot of baby Jesus paintings in there. And he doesn't know what to do. So what he hears a voice, one with he assumes to be an English accent, which is actually a mix of English and Australian, leading a tour. I based this character, her name is Helen, we'll find out, on a real woman named Helen Bailey, who's the greatest art tour guide in Florence. You ever go there, you want an amazing tour of the Uffizi or the Accademia, you contact Helen Bailey. I based this character on her. Helen's English, but I made her just half Australian, just, I don't know why. And he follows her tour around. He sort of like gloms onto it, right? He poaches a spot on her tour and feels like he's being kind of clever. And the tour's amazing. He goes back to meet Bill at the hotel. They step into the piazza for a glass of prosecco before they go off to the restaurant as an aperitivo. And Helen goes riding by on her bike. Jacoby had just told Bill that he'd glommed onto the tour. Bill was like really embarrassed. That's like so tacky, stupid American. And he's feeling badly. And then there she goes by on her bike. Jacoby gets her attention. She skids to a stop. It's like, oh, the guy who glommed onto my tour. How'd you enjoy it? Right? He apologizes profusely, offers her a glass of prosecco. She sits down and joins them for the aperitivo, and they tell her story. How Jacoby and Bill have this thing in common they didn't know about until that day or the day before. And they're looking in the city for information. They're going to Il Teatro del Sale for dinner to help find that information. She finds it just fascinating and charming, and she tags along. There's definitely some romantic tension going on between Jacoby and Helen, for sure. They go to the Teatro del Sale. They enter and get special seating there, and they're told they'll meet with Fabio and Maria afterward to find their information, but before they must have a meal. Whew! That was a big setup. But if I didn't set it up, you wouldn't know what I was talking about. Okay. They were sitting there, and Helen finally gets around to asking Jacoby, like, "What the hell are you doing here?" Right? And for how long will you be here? He says he'll be here for a whole year, and she suggests perhaps they get together another time, and he starts feeling really guilty, right, about his obviously his moral abdication here, right? And thankfully he's interrupted by dinner being announced. La prima corso è pronto, un misto di verdure di Elba. Someone yells out from behind the glass. The first course is ready. It's a mixed vegetable plate from the island of Elba, which is on the Tyrrhenian side of the peninsula. Everyone seemed to stand at once and advance on the buffet tables, now prepared for an onslaught. Let's see if they have gurgoglione, Bill teased, rising from his chair. What exactly is that? Helen asked, also rising. Spicy potato and greens, indigenous to the island of Elba. I'll go, Jacoby volunteered. I'll get enough for all of us. I'm coming too, Helen said. Fair enough, Bill said, sitting back down. I'll make sure the wine is safe for consumption. Jacoby and Helen joined a small scuffle among Italians not familiar with buffet etiquette. Jacoby was bumped out of place twice by a stocky woman twice his age. He exchanged smirking glances with Helen during their slow advance. By the time they reached the table, most every platter had been picked over. They salvaged some carrots, sautéed with thyme, and returned with their pithy offerings. Bill awaited, upright and pleased. Full plates of potatoes and green beans in front of each spot. Gorgonzola, my friends. How'd you get that? Jacoby asked. Gianluca brought them for us. He's the host who's taking care of that. We're in the seats reserved for guests of honor. We, therefore, don't need to risk our safety in that scrum. Oh, thank God, Helen blurted. Jacoby rubbed his arm where he was sure a bruise would rise. They chinked wine glasses and began. The gorgonzola was full of flavor and bite. The soft potatoes and crisp greens were coated in a bright sauce with a spicy twang. This kind of dish reminded Jacoby of the things he could survive on, temporarily, as a vegetarian. It also reminded him that he was famished, his hots for Helen having distracted him from his appetite. Before they could finish their first plates, Gianluca arrived with 3 small ramekins filled with an off-white flan-like concoction. These are from the maestro, from the street across in the kitchen of Cibreo. Let me guess, Bill said, Fabio's formato di carciofo. Gianluca smiled, bowed his head, and walked away. Jacoby knew by the smell and his earlier encounter with Fabio in the market that carciofo meant artichoke. He made a vow to learn Italian language through food, to become kitchen fluent, which might be the perfect type of fluency. The carciofo part I understand, of course, Helen said, her eyes wide and curious. But what's a sfumato? Traditionally, in Cucina Tipica, it's a timbale, egg-based, almost like a fluffy frittata, Bill said. But Fabio's are more like a savory flan, lighter and infused with flavor of the primary ingredient, which in this case is carciofo. They dug their spoons into the gelatinous surface and came away with mouthfuls of rapture. My, Bill said, wiping a napkin on his mouth. Is that your way of saying holy fucking shit? Helen asked, leaning in for discretion, her eyes bulging and her shoulders raised. Yes, Bill said, it is. They laughed and spooned down the sfumato to the last smear. Their spotless ramekins were replaced with 3 bowls of tiny clams in a pungent broth, followed by a platter of whole roasted anchovies just removed from the wood-burning oven, dressed and handed to Jacoby directly through the open partition. Grazie, he said to the chef. The chef smiled and went back to his happy work on full display. They continued to receive supplemented plates not available to the rest of the room, including small turkey meatballs in a light tomato sauce, fried pieces of rabbit, and roasted zucchini stuffed with ground pork. They ate as if they were participants in a show, not speaking of anything else except the food, but mostly enjoying the silence of their experience and washing it all down with carafes of wine. The final course was roasted chicken pieces with sausage, potatoes, cloves of garlic, and caramelized onions. Gianluca brought their food on a platter along with a bottle of Vino Nobile de Montepulciano, a robust red, among the best of Tuscany's celebrated wines. It tasted to Jacoby like tongue music. There was nowhere else in the world Jacoby wished to be. This was his Grand Canyon, his Hawaii, Mount Everest, or Disney World. His paradise was a theater, cafeteria, commissary, sharing a table with 2 people he hardly knew but liked immensely, full of possibilities, in a room full of shamelessly happy people. Everyone, those working and those eating, it was all so magical, so alive. Right. So they eat this meal, then they connect with Fabio and Maria after her performance, after she does a great performance, and they eat this ancient cheese that they'd found somewhere in a cave. It's like this Parmesan that's like was found, many years after it had been covered after an earthquake. Which is an experience I actually had at this restaurant with my dear friend Carlos and Fabio and Maria. And it's crunchy and delicious. They're eating the Parmesan cheese, having the time of their lives, washing it down with wine. But then they're like, we can't help you guys. I'm sorry, we never heard of this. We knew the family, of course, but we never heard of this statue with a cat and blah, 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 and where she might be hiding. And they're like, oh, crap. So Helen and Bill and Jacoby leave eventually, like late into the night. And on their way out, the host guy, Gianluca, gives them each a gift bag of things from the restaurant, and then he whispers something to Jacoby. And he whispers him a secret that he might know where this cat is. Right? That whispered secret leads them back through Florence in the middle of the night, right? Not the Da Vinci Code here, right? They're just walking along, having fun, but looking with a destination in mind, and they end up sort of stumbling down this rabbit hole of a gay nightclub. And in the gay nightclub, which has many different levels and rooms, etc., Bill runs off with a rent boy, and Helen and Jacoby dance all night in this room with a bunch of Brazilian trannies and other people from Florence who were there that evening, and they dance all night long. In the morning, they are walking back. But they don't find anything out. They come up empty in their search for clues, etc. Sort of distracted by the time they were having, but just the difficulty in wondering why this club was even supposed to provide a clue, right? So they're walking back back towards where they left Helen's bike the night before, right? And she's still unaware of the fact, that Jacoby's engaged, and she's sort of feeling enamored with him as well. The connection is obviously real. She smiled with warmth and confidence, spinning. Oh, she said, we should find time for a proper date, though I'd be happy to go dancing with the Brazilian trannies again sometime as well. Oh, I'm not killing her accent. I'm going with it. She smiled with warmth and confidence, spinning Jacoby's moral compass, draining him of whatever energy he had left. He lost sensation in his feet and struggled to find his footing. Are you all right? Helen asked, a concerned hand below her throat, an amused wink on her lips. Yeah, Jacoby said, gathering himself. It's just. Helen's hand fell on her face. Helen's hand fell and her face went flat. Oh, she said. I thought for a second there that my charming offer had nearly swept you off your feet. A pigeon fluttered down, and the front gate of a store across the piazza squealed open. Spots of light began to appear, and flickers of day gathered in the sky high above the facades. It's just that, Jacoby tried again, to kickstart his explanation, which somehow had to balance reality with the need to convey genuine interest. It's just that... Oh, stop, Helen implored. My God, if you utter the word complicated, I'm going to slaughter you right here. Jacoby saw the opening for humor. He opened his mouth as if to speak the unspeakable word, and then held it in mock pause. Helen whacked him on the forearm and faked a countenance of contrition. It's not like... over the past 12 hours or so, I haven't imagined what it would be like to kiss you, or wake up next to you on a lazy morning, or introduce you to my expat friends and my Italian friends, or show you some of the favorite places in Florence, or take you on a drive on the magical road to Montepulciano and Montalcino, or anything like that at all. Good thing, Jacoby answered. Oh, Jacoby, Helen said in a playfully affected tone, we could have had such a damn good time together. Yes, he answered, right on cue. Isn't it pretty to think so? Helen clapped her hands and held them in prayer position. Don't tell me that is your favorite novel, too. It's not, he said, but I do love that line. I'm more of a Fitzgerald man myself. But I wish you were more of a dolt, It'd be easier to hop on my bike and ride away. Trust me, he said, I'm worse than a dolt. I'm a hot mess. A street sweeper roared into the piazza to make its rounds. Bill nudged his head out from the nearby alley. Helen pinched Jacoby's chin like a piece of fruit. Well, Mr. Hot Mess, she said, climbing on her bike, if you find yourself free of the messy part, your hot self can always find me at the museum. How poetic, Jacoby said. Helen smirked, pecked him hard on the lips, and rode off. A taxi warbled into the cobbled piazza and crossed in front of Helen just as she flitted out of sight. The sting from her kiss faded from Jacoby's mouth as the sun threatened to topple the hills to the east of the city. In the fledgling light, Bill and Jacoby walked the awakening streets, now busy with deliveries and the first cafe's opening. Outside a bakery, a man loaded crates of fresh bread into the hatchback of a car. Bill offered him some coins, but the man refused payment and handed over a loaf of warm semolina. They ate in silence as they approached the river. A sheen of silver spread across its Pacific surface, cut by a single rower sculling at a decent clip. Bill looked particularly fatigued, so Jacoby offered to make the climb alone to the Piazza Michelangelo to retrieve the car and return down the hill. Thank you, Jacoby, Bill said. I will watch the sunrise from here. Jacoby crossed the empty Ponte Vecchio, past his jewelry shops of mixed configurations. He wandered through sleepy San Nicolo and breathed the morning air deep through his nose as he trudged up the dewy paths toward the piazza and tried to resist a reconciliation that was long overdue. He was lost. The pursuit of the heiress relative had been fun, a distraction and an adventure that served his purpose beyond what Jacoby could have realistically predicted. It had helped settle him in the village and familiarize with town, but now he was decidedly unsettled and about to return to the barn in the hills with a fiancée he would never marry. Though he'd have to stay with Claire for the time being because he still had nowhere else to go. No real idea of what he wanted beyond the sense of place and pleasure he enjoyed in Italy. The idea of having to return to America crept over the edges of his fortress walls. Back home, he'd have to attempt to reinvent himself in a setting that provided no inspiration, no purpose, and very few options. He reached the top of the climb and turned around to face the east just as the sun fully rose above the mountains. And the city below, its terracotta domes and stone towers and silver river were flooded with gold in an instant that took Jacoby's breath and made him vow to never leave. He felt, for the first time in his life, what it was like to be home, to be in love with a place. He would have to stay. The city had just told him so. His job was to figure out a realistic way to make that happen. So saying that's enough. I could do more. So that's that. So Jacoby's sort of lost right now, right? And what happens next, I'll have to tell you in our next episode. Though the adventure continues. So what's the matter, girl? What time is it?
Tired.
Whoa! It's been an hour and 15 minutes.
Yes, it has.
I can do this all night, people.
No, I will not be here.
All right. So this is what I made for you. You don't need to be in the picture, so.
I'm not trying to. I'm not. Can I flip it around?
No, I don't care.
No, I mean,
What are you watching?
I'm trying to flip the camera around. Rotate your phone. Oh my god, this is not working out well. Oh my god, this is so ugly.
Go.
I don't know how to flip the camera around. Okay. See what I'm trying to do?
Yeah, it's fine. So this is my grandmother's chicken, right? So the dishes are from all over Italy. Right? This one here is Nonnie's chicken, and my grandmother made this. She's Sicilian. We had it every Sunday at her house growing up. There was no options but other than to have this, right? Along all of the magnificent things that she made, it was spectacular. This is a more modern dish. This is from different part. This is bucatini alla matriciana. The sauce is a matriciana sauce from the village of Amatrici. In the region of Lazio on the way towards Le Marche. It's a classic Italian dish of central Italy. It has guanciale at its core, right? Caramelized red onion, some pepperoncino, tomatoes, obviously, and some basil. It's spectacular. You serve it over bucatini. This is a pasta from central Italy called bucatini. The buco is whole, teeny, small whole. It's a great noodle. You wanted to make this vegetarian, you just leave the guanciale out. We have a bouquet of my favorite flower, which is Tuscan kale, right? And we have, for my vegetarian friends, some polenta, right? So we're covering the whole peninsula here. Southern Italy, central Italy, northern Italy. This is polenta with black truffles, right? I used just straight water to make this, no chicken stock. It's cornmeal, like a porridge, studded with black truffles and seasoned with salt and olive oil. So there we are. Thank you all for coming to our home today. I hope you enjoyed the reading. I realized it was long. I know, that light's killing me, right? That it was quite long, but I thank you for coming. Hi, so thank you, sweetheart. Go back to your room. And I wish you well. I hope you're taking care of yourself and taking care of those around you. I do look forward to seeing you again soon, next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Good job, Dad! Is it done yet?
I think so. Nothing to lose. We started late too, so.
What?
Am I still recording?
Are
we still on here?
I don't know.
I think we are. Stop this damn bus. Amy, help.